You think explaining yourself makes you look smart. It doesn't. It makes you look desperate. Every time you open your mouth to justify a decision, defend a choice, or soften a boundary with a reason, you are handing over power. You are placing the verdict of your life into someone else's hands. You are silently asking them, "Is this okay? Do you accept me now?" And whether they say yes or no, you've already lost. Because you asked. This is the game most people never even realize they're playing. They walk into rooms, into conversations, into relationships, already apologizing for existing, already shrinking, already calculating how much of themselves to hide so nobody gets uncomfortable. And they call it being considerate. They call it being mature. They call it humility. It is none of those things. It is weakness in a mask. And the world, people, systems, social hierarchies, they can smell it. They don't announce it. They just respond to it. They push a little harder. They respect you a little less. They test your limits more often. They stop asking and start assuming. And you wonder why you feel invisible. You wonder why your voice doesn't land. You wonder why you work harder than anyone in the room and somehow earn less authority than the person who does half the work but never explains themselves at all. Once you understand what's really happening, you cannot unsee it. The dynamic becomes visible everywhere, in every room, every relationship, every exchange of power. And from that moment forward, you either play the game consciously or you keep losing it unconsciously. This is Dominion Protocol. And this is the cold, uncomfortable truth Machiavelli understood 500 years ago that most people today are still not ready to hear. Most people believe that transparency builds trust, that showing your reasoning earns respect. That vulnerability, the kind where you explain your pain, your process, your intentions, creates connection. And in certain intimate spaces, maybe it does. But in the arena, in the workplace, in social hierarchies, in negotiations, in competitive environments, in rooms where power is being distributed silently while everyone pretends to be equal, transparency is a liability. When you explain yourself, you are doing several things at once, and none of them serve you. You are signaling that you need validation. You are revealing your internal architecture to people who may use it against you. You are positioning yourself as someone who requires approval before acting. And you are creating a negotiation where none was necessary. Most people don't know they're doing this. They were trained to do it. From childhood, from school systems that reward compliance and punish confidence, from cultures that mistake quietness for arrogance and justification for integrity, they were conditioned to always explain, always defend, always make themselves legible to whoever might be watching. They want you legible. Legible people are manageable people. Legible people can be predicted, controlled, redirected. The moment you become fully readable to everyone around you, you stop being powerful and become predictable. And predictable people do not hold power for long. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli sat in a position of complete political ruin, stripped of his role, exiled, tortured, discarded, and he used that vantage point to write the most honest document about power that has ever been produced. Not because he was cruel. Not because he was manipulative. But because he was willing to say what everyone in power already knew and what everyone without power refused to accept. Power does not reward honesty. It rewards strategy. Power does not respect need. It respects self-sufficiency. Power does not follow the loudest voice, or the most justified voice, or the most morally righteous voice. It follows the most control voice. The one that doesn't shake. The one that doesn't seek permission. The one that acts, states, and moves, without explanation. Machiavelli's cold rule wasn't about being evil. It was about being awake. It was the recognition that the world operates on perception, leverage, and silence as much as it operates on merit and fairness. And the men and women who understand this don't complain about it. They adapt to it. They master it. And then they use it. That is what you are going to do. After this, you will never again offer your reasoning to someone who didn't earn it. You will never again feel the compulsion to soften a boundary with an explanation. You will stop performing availability. You will stop advertising your intentions. You will become, to the untrained eye, impossible to read, and to the trained eye, visibly dangerous in the most strategic sense of the word. You will not become cold. You will become precise. You will not become disconnected. You will become deliberate. You will not become arrogant. You will become sovereign. This is not a motivational shift. This is structural. These are rules, the kind that rewire how you operate at the level of behavior, not belief. You do not need to feel different first. You begin acting differently. The feeling follows. Rule 1. Silence is not absence. It is pressure. Most people are terrified of silence. They cannot tolerate a pause in conversation without filling it. They interpret silence as rejection, as distance, as something broken that needs to be fixed immediately with words, with explanations, with warmth. This is a psychological vulnerability, and the moment you understand it, you can use it, or at minimum, stop being controlled by it. When you speak less, people listen more. When you respond slowly, people question themselves. When you make a decision and don't explain it, the person across from you has two options: accept it or reject it. There is no middle ground of negotiation because you never opened the floor to negotiation. Think about the last time someone with real authority in your life made a decision. Did they explain it at length? Did they offer a list of reasons? Did they nervously fill the silence after stating their position? No. They stated it. They moved. The explanation was implied by their confidence, not delivered through their words. You have been trained to speak when silence would serve you better. You have been trained to explain when your silence would actually communicate more. Every time you rush to fill a pause, you relieve the other person of the discomfort that was working in your favor. Let them sit in it. Silence is not the absence of communication. Silence is the most powerful kind. It forces people to project. It forces them to recalculate. It forces them to wonder what you are thinking instead of knowing exactly what you are thinking. And that uncertainty, in the architecture of social dynamics, is leverage. Write this down. The most powerful thing you can say after stating your position is nothing. Rule 2. Justification is a transaction. Stop paying for what you already own. Here is the mechanism nobody explains clearly enough. When you justify yourself to someone, you are making an implicit offer. You are saying, "Here is my reasoning. Now you decide if it's acceptable." You are inviting a verdict. You are making the relationship transactional in a way that positions you below them, as the one seeking approval rather than the one who doesn't require it. This is not theoretical. You have felt this. You have explained your choice to someone, a parent, a boss, a partner, a friend, and felt the instant shift in dynamic the moment they responded with skepticism. Suddenly you're defending. You're expanding the explanation. You're adding more detail, more context, more justification, and with every sentence, you feel smaller, not larger. That is the trap. The more you explain, the more you validate their right to evaluate you. The more you justify, the more real their authority over your choices becomes. Here is the reframe that changes everything. You do not owe anyone access to your internal process. Your decisions are yours. Your reasoning is yours. The outcome is what they interact with, not the machinery behind it. When someone asks you why you made a certain choice, the question is almost never neutral. It is a probe. It is a test. It is an invitation for you to either defend yourself, which concedes authority to them, or to demonstrate that you don't need their approval to operate. The answer to "why did you do that?" is often, simply, "it was the right call." And then silence. Not because you're hiding something. Not because you're playing games. But because the inner workings of your strategy do not require their endorsement to be valid. You stop paying for what you already own. Your choices. Your life. Your direction. These are not subject to a vote. Rule 3. Control the frame before you enter the room. Power is almost never won in the middle of a conversation. It is set before the conversation begins. The frame is the invisible context that determines how every interaction is interpreted. Walk into a room nervous and apologetic, and everything you say is filtered through that frame. They hear your words, but they feel your need, and the need cancels the words. Walk into a room composed, deliberate, and unbothered, and even your most ordinary statements carry weight. Most people react to social environments. They read the room and adjust to it. And this is why they are always operating inside someone else's frame. They are always responding, adapting, calibrating, and calibration, at its worst, is just a sophisticated form of submission. The strategic individual does not adapt to the room. They arrive as themselves so completely, so consistently, and so without apology that the room gradually adapts to them. Not through aggression. Not through volume. Through the immovability of their presence. This is why charismatic, powerful people seem to have an almost gravitational quality. It's not their looks. It's not their wealth. It's that they do not arrive with questions. They do not arrive seeking confirmation. They arrive with a fully occupied interior, and that fullness, that groundedness, pulls others into their orbit. You begin controlling the frame before any conversation by deciding who you are before you walk through the door. Not performing. Deciding. There's a difference. Performance is visible. Decision is bone deep. When you are truly decided about who you are and what you are there to do, you do not need the room to tell you. You already know. Comment: I decide the frame. Rule 4. Never negotiate your boundaries. State them. There is a catastrophic difference between explaining a boundary and stating one. Explaining: I can't really come to that because I've got a lot going on and I've been really tired lately and I think I just need some time to myself. I hope that's okay. Stating: I won't be there. The first version is an apology wrapped in reasons. It invites pushback. It signals flexibility. It tells the other person that if they find a flaw in your reasoning, the boundary dissolves. And they will push. Not always consciously. But they will push because you have indicated that the boundary is conditional, that it depends on their acceptance of your justification. The second version is a wall. There is nothing to negotiate. There is no reasoning to dismantle. The boundary exists as a fact, not as a request for permission. Weak boundaries make people feel unsafe around you, not safe. When people can't predict where your limits are because your limits shift based on how much social pressure is applied, they stop trusting you. They stop respecting you. They keep testing because they have learned, through your own behavior, that the tests sometimes work. Hard, quietly stated, never explained limits create safety for both parties. They know where you end. They know what's real. And the people who are worthy of your presence, the ones who actually respect you, will not resent the wall. They will respect it. Because it tells them something important. This person knows who they are. The people who push back against your clean, quiet, unexplained limits are telling you something too. Listen to what they're telling you. Burn this into your mind. Explaining your boundary is the first step toward abandoning it. Rule 5. Emotion is information. Broadcast it strategically. This is where most people misunderstand strategic detachment. They think emotional control means emotional suppression. They think dominance requires numbness. That is not it. That is just a different kind of weakness wearing a harder mask. Emotional discipline is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of when, how much, and to whom you reveal it. Emotions are social signals. Every time you express one, you are sending information about your internal state to whoever is watching. That information can be used to care for you. It can also be used to manipulate you, to calibrate against you, to find the exact frequency that destabilizes you. Most people broadcast everything. Frustration, disappointment, hope, fear, anxiety, all of it, unfiltered, in real time, to everyone in their environment. They are emotionally transparent in a world that does not always reward transparency. And what happens is that the people around them, not necessarily out of malice, but simply out of human instinct, learn exactly which buttons to press, which silences will break them, which kind of approval makes them compliant. The strategic individual feels everything. But they choose what to show and when. Joy, expressed selectively, becomes a gift, not a reflex. Anger, deployed deliberately, becomes a statement, not a reaction. Disappointment, revealed rarely, carries weight precisely because it is rare. Silence, held in moments where emotion would be expected, communicates more command over the situation than any outburst could. You are not suppressing yourself. You are deciding yourself. There is a profound difference. Suppression is internal violence. Decision is internal authority. The person who never flinches is not dead inside. They are simply no longer controlled by their own reactions. And that shift, that space between stimulus and response, is where all power lives. Rule 6. Stop competing. Start making yourself incomparable. Competition is a frame that always contains you. The moment you are competing, you have accepted someone else's metric for what winning looks like. You have agreed to be measured on a scale you didn't design. And even if you win, you have won on their terms, which means they still define the game. Most people spend their entire lives competing. Competing for attention, for status, for approval, for positions, for validation from people whose opinion they secretly resent needing. They exhaust themselves running a race they didn't choose on a track someone else built. The move is to become incomparable. When you develop a combination of depth, specificity, and presence that is uniquely yours, when you stop performing the version of success that is legible to the crowd and start pursuing the version that is true to your architecture, you exit the competition entirely. You cannot be ranked against someone who operates in a different dimension. This is not about arrogance. It is about self-knowledge pursued so ruthlessly that the result is a clarity about who you are and what you are building that makes external comparison feel not just unnecessary but genuinely irrelevant. People will try to rank you anyway. They will try to place you in categories, define you by your past, measure you by metrics that don't apply to what you're actually doing. Let them. Your silence on the matter is your answer. Say it with me. I am not in competition. I am in construction. Now we arrive at the part of this where most content tells you to feel good, to feel empowered, to celebrate how far you've come. That is not what this is. What this is an execution. The identity execution. There is a version of you that has been operating for years under the assumption that explaining yourself would eventually earn you the respect you wanted. That justifying your choices would, over time, result in people trusting your judgment. That being endlessly available, endlessly transparent, endlessly readable, would make you loved, or valued, or safe. That version of you was wrong. Not because you were stupid. Not because you were weak in any final sense. But because you were operating on false information. You were taught a set of social rules that were designed to make you manageable, and you followed them faithfully. And the result was not the connection or the respect or the security you were promised. The result was that you became predictable. And predictable people get taken for granted. That version of you must be retired. Not with anger. Not with resentment toward the people who benefited from your transparency. But with clarity. With the surgical precision of someone who now knows better and will not allow themselves to continue operating on outdated code. You execute the need for approval. You execute the compulsion to explain. You execute the habit of softening your boundaries with reasons that were never required. You execute the version of yourself that enters rooms looking for validation instead of already carrying it. This is not a metaphor. This is behavioral surgery. And it starts the moment you finish watching this. The old version of you had a function. It kept you safe in environments where being readable was necessary for survival. You needed it then. You do not need it now. What you need now is the version that knows the rules, not to follow them, but to see through them. The version that speaks less and means more. That occupies space without apologizing for it. That makes decisions and moves forward without holding them up for review. That version doesn't announce itself. It doesn't make a declaration. It simply appears, in your posture, in your silence, in the absence of justification where justification used to live. And people will feel it before they understand it. They will not be able to explain why they treat you differently. They will not be able to identify what shifted. But they will feel that something is different. That you are no longer available to be managed. That you are no longer seeking their verdict. And the room will shift toward you. This is the law. You do not explain. You do not justify. You do not compete for a position in a hierarchy you have the power to transcend. You move. You decide. You occupy. You are not a man or woman who needs permission to exist fully. You are not someone whose value is contingent on how well you can articulate your reasoning to people who were never qualified to evaluate it. You are not what you apologized for. You are not what you explained away. You are not the version of yourself that shrunk in rooms where you should have taken up space. You are what remains when all of that is gone. Controlled. Precise. Sovereign. Comment. I no longer explain myself.